Well, welcome to the RIBA Halloween party.
Hello.
Hi.
Kira.
Okay, now.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
From Nicaragua.
Yeah.
Ooh,
What's back
wonderful.
there?
Wonderful.
Hey, peace. I love your hat. Thank you. That's great.
John, you look great.
Okay.
I have got to see if I can get everybody in the picture here. Oh, maybe later.
Time to get started. The clock is ringing.
So I'd like to start us off with a little sage smudge as we call upon the ancestors and the grandmothers and the healing guides and teachers, the ascended masters, and the powers of the 7 directions, the above, the below, and the within, the within, the within, the place we all meet as one, as I welcome you to this Halloween Samhain Ancestors, Honoring of the Ancestors Day with RIBA. Sarah Dawn.
Thank you, Peace. Yeah, so we're just welcome. And for those of you who don't know RIBA, we're the Rebirth International Breathwork Association, founded by myself, Heike Strombach, and Peace Virginia Arnold. We are here continuing the works of Leonard Orr, who is the founder of the modern day breathwork movement. Yes, and we're celebrating some of the funner, creative, and unique aspects of physical immortality, which is something that Leonard was obviously very keen on and kind of launched into our consciousness. And so I'm just glad to be here today, sharing stories that I know that he loved, that we also fell in love with, and exploring consciousness around Halloween and resurrection and transmutation and all kinds of the wilder side of human potential. So I think that, Heike, was there anything that you wanted to add or say before we're going to read?
To have this beautiful people here together with us, and hopefully many are watching us and watching the recording. Welcome everybody all around the world.
Yes. Yeah, and if you're in costume, feel free to turn your videos on and share that with us. We're going to start out just reading a few affirmations. Peace, were you going to guide us in that? You want to introduce that?
Yes, we decided to share a few of the victory affirmations, and many people who have been at the training center know that these are used to stir up our buried beliefs around death and dying and our ancestral inheritances through that. So, and many people found these quite activating because the word death is in there, and they had great objection to stirring it up, but that was the point. You stir it up to clear it out and have some say into what the content of your mind is that you choose to work with. So we thought that would be a good way to start. And I just want to remind everybody to take a few letting go breaths as needed. And a lot of the materials and the stories might really conflict with some of your foundational structures of reality. So just keep an open mind and breathe and relax. And you don't have to try to figure it out. Try to enjoy it. So we'll begin with the victory affirmations, and Sarah, Heike, and I will take turns reading them twice. The first time, just listen. And the second time, you can repeat them back. We'll just do about 9 of them, so this won't be too terribly long. But if you could turn off your mics for this so that when you're reading it, you're hearing yourself. You'll be able to hear yourself without too much interference from all the other voices reading at different paces. So here we go. So the first one is, we are living the victorious life on this planet in the kingdom of God now. Jay. We are living the victorious life in the kingdom of God now. Jay.
The cause of death is now lifted from my mind and my body. We are death-free. Jay!
Jay. Jay. The cause of death is now lifted from my mind and body. We are death-free.
Jay!
The death urge is now banished from my friends and myself. We have achieved victory over death.
Jay.
Jay. The death, urge is now banished from my friends and myself. We have achieved victory over death.
Jay!
Okay. I am no longer a victim of death. Death is my friend and servant. The principle of death is the principle of renewal, change, and regeneration. Death, rightly understood, supports life. I no longer fear death. Death is optional. I am now free of my family beliefs and traditions around death. Jay.
Jay.
I am no longer a victim of death. Death is my friend and servant. The principle of death is the principle of renewal, change, and regeneration. Death, rightly understood, supports life. I no longer fear death. Death is optional. I am now free of my family beliefs and traditions around death. Jay.
The old enemy of mankind is now dead. The wicked witch is dead. Ding dong.
Repeat.
The old enemy of mankind is now dead. The wicked witch is dead. The good witches are all alive. Ding dong.
Jay.
Death is powerless when I free myself from my mental belief in it and when I don't give it life energy. Practicing the presence of God and the simple and pleasurable spiritual purification practices which God has given us with mind, earth, air, water, and fire gives us victory over death. We now control death. Death does not control us. Jay.
Jay.
Death is powerless when I free myself from my mental belief in it and when I don't give it life energy. Practicing the presence of God and the simple and pleasurable spiritual purification practices which God has given us with mind, earth, air, water, and fire gives us victory over death. We now control death. Death does not control us.
Jay.
Jay.
It is okay with God if I master life and death. In fact, she recommends it and has done so for millions of years. I can now trust God. She no longer kills people. God no longer kills children, parents, old people, young people, or good or bad people. Everyone is responsible for their own death by their own thoughts and lifestyles. Jay.
Jay.
I can now trust God. God no longer kills people. God no longer kills children, parents, old people, young people, good people, or bad people. Everyone is responsible for their own thoughts and lifestyle. Jay.
Their own death.
Last one.
My family is now free of death. My son is now free of death. My daughter now is free of death. My dear husband now is free of death. My sister and brother are now free of death. My mother and father are free to choose. We all can be free of death.
Jay.
My family is now free of death. My son is now free of death. My daughter is now free of death. My dear husband now is free of death. My sister and brother are now free of death, and my mother and father are free to choose. We can all be free of death. Jay!
Jay. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, P. So I know that some of our friends here are here on kind of a time schedule. So I want to bring you on in and to introduce yourself and have some fun. And Leah Holtzman, if you want to unmute yourself and just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you want to share today with us. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you for asking me. My name is Leah Holtzman, and I met Leonard in 77 and then became his personal assistant from 79 to 82. So it's actually been quite a long time since I was very closely involved with Leonard, but he definitely had placed his mark upon my life. And when I heard about physical immortality, it was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So of course I was in my early 30s too. I noticed my relationship to physical immortality changes the older I get. And to me, physical immortality is a gateway conversation to bigger and more evolved conversations. And I particularly am interested in ascension. So while I was doing a little bit of research on ascension quite some time ago, I found this man by the name of Sal Rakelli. I don't know if anybody's heard of him or not. I hadn't, but he has a good website with lots of good articles and a couple of books. And I found a very short thing that I'd like to read to you. It's called Benefits of Ascension. I don't know if this is true or not. Who knows what's true? I mean, the more we learn about belief, the more we realize that whatever you believe to be true, you can pretty much create. And the way that science works, the way we understand science now is you do a research experiment, and whatever you're looking for, you have a tendency to create. So anything is possible. So I find belief systems I like, and I believe them. So this one's I kind of like. The light body uses silicon as its primary building block, unlike the flesh body, which is based on carbon. CO2 is converted to SiO2, which, as you probably guessed, is the formula for the common quartz crystals. The crystal light body shimmers and sparkles to those who can see it, but is invisible to those in the lower third dimensional reality. That is why in the story of the rapture, people simply disappear from the perspective of a 3D entity who stays behind. To the one who has just ascended, the world does not completely disappear, but takes on a radiance unlike anything previously experienced. I like that part. But takes on a radiance unlike anything previously experienced. It is as if a new world has been born. In actuality, both worlds existed all along, but one's awareness was focused on the third dimensional and fourth dimensional world. The fifth dimensional world is a place of indescribable beauty. Everything shines and vibrates. There is no death and no birth and no death as we know them. No sickness, no aging, no worry, and no fear. Once we learn how to stop aging and remain eternally youthful, then we also learn to create our body to be any way we like. If we get tired of it, we just change it. I'd be a little taller. We dematerialize and rematerialize wherever and whenever we want, across any part of time and space. So the thought that we would get bored living forever in the same body is totally irrelevant. In higher states of consciousness, there is no such thing as boredom anyway. This scenario need not take place in the far distant future. It is available in this lifetime if we remain single-focused on God's love and service to others. Ascension is here now, in this incredible time period in which we choose to embody. I like that. So thank you for letting me share that. I didn't know it would touch me so deeply reading it out loud. It didn't when I was reading it to myself. Thank
That's
you.
beautiful. Well, we welcome that.
Yes, and
Thank
I'm going to
you.
leave at the half hour. I got to go to church. I don't even know what a time it is. I'll look. So thank
have
you for
14
having
minutes.
me. So if
20
you see
past 20 past.
if you see me disappear, I have ascended.
All right.
That's beautiful.
Enjoy that.
Good to see
Sounds
you,
really
Leah.
fun. And we've got you coming on next. I know that you're on a schedule also. Leah, thank you so much. That was beautiful.
Thank
And
you.
you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and
Right. Well, I'll tell you, my schedule changed a lot. I kind of blocked it out. My name
Okay.
is Ann Sermons Gillis, and I met Leonard in the mid 80s. I invited him to come to a center. I had an alternative spiritual center in Memphis, Tennessee. And I had was reading some book, and it said, hang around the people that you admire. And I had read some of Leonard's stuff, and I said, I want to hang out with Leonard Orr. So I was in Atlanta that weekend for, I think, a loving relationships training. And there was a sign that said that Leonard was coming to town. And I said, oh boy, I'm coming back to Atlanta. And I was at a party, and somebody said, well, why don't you just invite Leonard to come? And I said, me? Invite Leonard Orr to come? Yeah. I called him up, Leonard, and I told him my name. He was there. And from then on, he came quite a number of times to speak in Memphis, and he always stayed with me. So that was an experience. I was hanging on by a thread financially, and I remember one time he was there and he was calling all of these Russians long distance. Now, I don't know if y'all remember but this is when it was everything, it was like $1 a minute, to call. And I'm like, just, threadbare. And I said, Leonard, I can't, I said, you're going to have to pay for these calls. And he said, okay. So he just slammed down a $100 bill. And, come to find out, it was like exactly $100 that that the calls were, and that was pretty miraculous. And one of the things about him was that he would say, I need somebody to do something. And it would be something outrageous. I knew that we were all very young. We were very busy with our lives. And I'm thinking, I'm going to have a hard time finding anybody to do this. And like within a minute or so, I can remember a friend of mine walked through, and she said, by the way, do you need anything? And he said, yeah, I need this. He says, no problem. And it just happened over and over again where he would have a need and it was instantly met. Now, one of the things I admired about him was that he not only taught physical immortality, he taught prosperity. And that was a very wise thing to do, because when you want to live for a very long time, probably you're going to think, well, how am I going to financially pull that off? And so his life was a living example of how you pull off supporting yourself out of thin air. And he was ingenious in doing that. One time, and you may have been at that one, Leah, this was in Houston, where he did this thing where he had a contest. And he said, everybody donate some money. So everybody donated some money. And he said, the person who thinks they deserve this the most because you're so poor, please give a speech about that. And then the person that thinks that they're the wealthiest, please give the speech about that. And the one that wins. And so there are two different piles of money. So I gave a speech for both of them, why I deserved it, I was so poor. And then why I deserved it, I was so rich. Well, I lost the poor pool, but I won the wealthy pool. And I can remember my response, because it was something like, I am wealthy because I can be in the present moment without needing anything else. I can be with a flower and really be present. And so it was really a talk about how being present was the most abundant spot on earth. As far as physical immortality, I do remember him telling stories of Annalise Guerin, which was interesting because I lived in Tennessee. And so I looked her up, but I don't remember much about that. But I do remember that he brought a picture one time. He had been in India recently, and he had these pictures. I'm looking at one of them, and there's this man standing on this platform, and he's really old, and he's I think somebody's throwing something to him on the platform. He's catching food, and I said, what is this? And he says, this is a 300-year-old yogi in India, and people are throwing him food. And as you probably know, when Leonard went to India, he would always search out physical immortals, and he would look for the, old people. And this was the picture of the oldest person that I remember seeing. And let's see, another another Leonard story, and that is that I invited some friends over because Leonard was going to initiate us into the fire. And so we all go into the backyard and we're expecting all this stuff. And so Leonard takes some charcoal or some wood and puts it in a little barbecue grill. He lights it up, doesn't say a word, and he leaves. And we're all standing around the barbecue pit with a fire, not knowing whatever. We didn't know what to do. But anyway, so it was like a conundrum. And so that's why I said it was interesting being with Leonard. He brought someone with him. Y'all may have known he had a disciple from India that he traveled with. Does anybody remember that? Who that
Vinay
was?
Shukla. Vinay Shukla.
So he was with Leonard one time when he was traveling, and he told me this story that I really loved. And he said, have seen Leonard go swimming in an ice lake and swim all the way across and swim back. And that was a very very powerful story. But I think Leonard fired up something in me that I didn't know was present. And it has always lived. And whether I was close to him or far away from him, I always felt close. I mean, whether I was physically close or not. So he was so intense. He brought out the parental disapproval syndrome on almost everybody. And one time I said to him, and this was just so sophomoric, I said, Leonard, you talk about prosperity all the time, and it seems like you're always trying to get money. And I didn't know about Campbell Hot Springs and him having to pay $10,000 a month for years after everybody backed out on that deal. And, when I found out about that, it was like, I'll never say another word about him trying to get money, because if he could do that, then he was a teacher that I wanted to listen to. Thank you.
Thank you. And
Thank
he
you,
kept
Anne.
supporting his training center as well. So he kept doing that because he felt like he promised to Babaji that he would always have a training center available for people.
Yeah, you mean I'm talking about the one in California? I'm talking
Yeah,
about
I know, but he kept doing that with the other places that he had. So
in Virginia. Yeah, I never made it there. But that Campbell Hot Springs was wild too. I wasn't used to the nudity. You leaving, Leah?
Bye, Leah. Thank you.
Leah did a great interview. I think I put it on the rebirthing site where I did an interview with Leah. It was
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, we'd love to see that. If anyone hasn't seen that, we can maybe post it in the comments below or something.
Oh, I think I did. Okay, I will. I did, but I thought I put it on the rebirthing site.
Okay.
Maybe.
Well, it's good to post it again because it scrolls all the way down and disappears. So
Okay.
it's okay to repost them every now and then.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're more than welcome, always.
Okay.
So
Beautiful.
I don't know, Heike, is anyone in the waiting room where we were looking for Danielle Kitt? She may not have made it today. Okay.
oh, I keep looking. I haven't opened the window,
Okay.
so I keep.
Okay, great. Well then, since she's not here yet, Anne, was there anything else that you wanted to share? Are you able to stay with us, or are you going to be leaving soon also?
I'm going to be staying for a while. There is something I want to that I forgot about, and that is in terms of this infinite potential. And he talked about health and healing. I know you heard this affirmation, but I love it, and that was one. My health is more important than my appetite, and I love that affirmation. But the other thing, another thing, this morning, this is just in line with the whole healing thing. Last night. Well, I've got my grand dog with me, or my regular dog with me, and the grand dog starts crying at night. So I go put her in bed, and I've been lifting her, and this morning I woke up and I couldn't breathe, and I had terrible pain shooting on my right side, and every time I breathed, it was a really intense pain. And I got up and I went in, and I didn't want to alarm my husband, and I just said, well, I've had this really bad pain, and we discussed it a little bit. And I'm sitting there and I thought, I wonder if I really intensely focus on healing this, if it will be healed. And in that moment, all the pain left. And it was just, I can't, that doesn't happen all the time. I'm sure you've had intermittent healing, intermittent miracles, all of those things. You know, if I could do it consistently, I'd be ascended, but I can do them intermittently. And it was just a wonderful experience to, and I will tell you, after Leonard, and I'm just getting ready to retire a little bit from this, but I developed I have a site on Facebook, a Facebook group called Abundance Affirmations, and I bill myself as Dr. Money, and I give advice and money affirmations and so forth. And that's really after Leonard's heart. I felt pushed to do that, and but I've been doing it for 3 years, and I'm getting ready to move to my next phase. I've been doing a newsletter, a virtual newsletter that's very intense. When I say intense, it has a lot of different parts to it. Original videos, articles, and so forth, and I put it out every week. And I've been doing that one for 10 years. And then before, I did a hard copy for 10 years that went out to 2,500 people, which is a lot of physical work to get that out. And I am going to retire from doing all that and look toward what my next phase is going to be of reinvention, radical reinvention in December.
Thank
That's
you.
exciting.
I'm interested in hearing where you go from here.
Maybe I do a lot of writing. I can say I was really excited one time when Leonard, that reminds me, I can remember a couple of times Leonard had contacted me and said, can I use that? I'd like to use that article, and that was really sweet. Felt good.
Nice.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anne. Well, yeah, so Peace, would you like to present some material also, since we're...
Yes, I know we're waiting for Danielle, and Danielle, and I
Danielle,
don't know
yeah.
if she will come, and she was going to read a story on the women who were branded as witches, and I do want to touch on that because, well, for the most part, that was an expansion of a takeover of land and resources. It was a genocide, and it was a genocide to break down a power structure. But so all people who had resources were targeted, but the real target of the Middle Ages and those dark ages were the women who were the heart and the center of the community, the midwives, the healers. The blessing witch was the one they really had to go after because she had the hearts of the people, the love and the loyalty of the people. So I think it's important, even in this conversation about extraordinary things that are outside of the box, the sanctified box. You know, it would behoove us to reclaim some of our gifts and abilities and our natural connection and affinity to the earth, and how responsive the earth is to us, and to have our internal connection to nature renewed so that it can express to us. And that is a personal connection, like Leonard would talk about, that we each have a personal connection with infinite intelligence. Well, that's our personal connection to infinite intelligence. It's our birthright. It's our right as part of the living, world. So I want to honor the memory of all those whose lives were brutally, destroyed, and in order to limit our potential so that we would respond to an external authority rather than our own internal authority and that higher authority that this is connected to. So maybe Danielle will come in later and read to us. And I would like to invite John Hooks maybe to speak on Halloween and Samhain and Day of the Dead and this time of year, and maybe the esoteric meanings, metaphysical symbolisms. John, will you unmute? Hello.
Hey, happy Halloween.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to be here. Every time I'm in the community with my fellow Robertas, I'm so happy and recharged, and it's Leonard's presence really is here with us. So I'm sincerely, I can feel a quality of the community that isn't felt in this way in other communities. So I'm really thankful for you putting these events together. So Halloween is the word is All Hallows Eve, and that speaks to all that is everything, and that's hallowed, which means holy or sacred. And it's the eve, the evening that this is celebrated. And during this time, people through many cultures around the world have dressed up in costumes and outfits that can be more monstrous, more ghoulish, more scary. Things representing the hidden, the occult, or the representing the unconscious mind. And so we're able to celebrate during this time the sacredness in the most taboo things, in the most feared things. And it's actually a time to bring love to fear. A lot of people say that the opposite of love is fear, but I don't see love as having an opposite. It's just a oneness. Love is just one. It's unity, consciousness, and there's no opposite to it. It's just like life. There's no opposite to life. Death isn't the opposing force to life at all. Death supports life when rightly understood. And that is what this celebration is about. The opposite of death is birth. That's the opposite of death. Those are the two sides of that coin. They play in the duality, birth and death, but life is the wholeness. And it's the same thing with our breath. The inhalation is known as the inspiration. And we'll take it back once again to the inhalation. Even the halos in the word inhalation is related to Halloween too, but we're more so going to be referring to the inspiration. That's the spirit that's coming in on the inhale. But on the exhale, that's also known as the expiration. The expiration is the exhale. Expiration is another name for death. When something expires, it dies. So every exhale, we are playing with death. We're playing with a dying. every inhale, we're playing with a rebirth. And if we deal with rebirthing, then we definitely celebrate death, because those words are interchangeable. They are one and the same. And to commune with our ancestors, that they're still alive. They definitely are here. There's no doubt, because all there is life. Life is all there is. So there's no doubt about that. But we don't know how. I don't know how, where, what. There's that book that Leonard, before Leonard made his disappearance,
Excuse me.
he was using the book a lot, Journey of Souls, and he began to share that a lot. And I was always I read a good portion of it, and I was always wondering, what was going on, because I could tell he was definitely contemplating those realms, the more than prior, with a different feeling than from when I first met him. And that book talks about these soul groups of people who were connected to, that we hang out with in the in-betweens and in these in-between realms. And that these groups are often, you actually end up hanging out with these people when you come into the planet as well, when you come into form as well. And so if we have these groups of people, family, friends, even enemies, in these groups of people, to be able uh, to honor them with physical things while we're here, because there's ones in our soul group who aren't here right now. They are in other realms, or in whatever. I don't know what it is. It's the realm of unknown. They're in that unknown, and we can actually honor them here with physical offerings. And that's what, like Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos, and a lot of the celebrations for ancestors are about, is using physical things that our ancestors or people in our soul group might have been attracted to, while we are here. And I intuit that by doing such, by honoring physical things, that the unseen and unknown aspects of our relation are fond of, that we're able to strengthen not only their connection to us and their wisdom and our giving of energy to them, but we're also able to strengthen our physical immortality, because we are honoring the physical world. We are honoring these things that they love and that they actually like to receive in the unknown realm, here and now. And by honoring them here and now, we're actually in a state of gratitude for these things, for the physical, for the forms that we are in. So ancestor connection is very important, because it makes the point that this physical world is so juicy and so desirous of those beings on the other side. And the other side is always as close as our exhalation. And so that's one of my favorite ways to offer to the ancestor. Like you could offer flowers, fruits, whatever, or things that they like, but the easiest way is with the breath and just rubbing the hands together. And then just giving that energy, that physical Shakti to your ancestors that are in your field. And they're in our DNA too. So we can direct it to our own DNA because our ancestors live in our DNA, and clearing some of the blockages from our ancestral patterns is found here in ancestor honoring, in honoring our ancestors with things that they love. We're actually able to let the parts of our DNA that that could have been carrying on the trauma from those times, we're able to do the resolving here and now. Whereas breathwork does it, breathwork can do it, but without some form of physical symbols that connect to our practice, and without that physical energy, without that pay, here's an interesting thing. The word payment or pay comes from the word peace or pacify. I'm writing a book right now. It's totally inspired out of Leonard's what he planted in me, and it's called Money Illumination. And it's all about how money is spirit. Money is absolutely spirit, and we can actually utilize our relationship with money like a relationship with spirit. Like, I'll give you one gem from the book. Money in the word monad. What is the monad according to Pythagoras? That's the divine mind or the divine unity consciousness. It's where the word money comes from. And Leonard would always talk about the ones and the zeros, how money comes, it's just ones and zeros. And that is, the one and the zero is a whole philosophy according to Pythagoras. It's related to the monad. So we'll be getting into that inside of this book, and so that we could spiritualize our relationship with money. So I guess that's all I have to upload.
Wonderful. I just like to add something about, because tomorrow the All Saints Day and the Halloween, the evening before this. So, I mean, ultimately we are all saints. And so also, there is no saint without a past and no sinner without a future. So we can celebrate our divine essence. And also what you said about the ancestors. I mean, after Leonard's passing, I read a lot of Rudolf Steiner, and the founder of the Waldorf School, and a lot of amazing things that he created. And he actually says, and I've been doing that we can participate in the evolution of the spiritual, the people in the spirit world, so when I read something precious, then I can invite them. They can participate in my life, because and also Leonard used to talk about that Babaji said that the learning is done here in the physical body. So if we want to contribute to all the saints on the other side, and that of course now includes Leonard, we can listen to their inspiration, or we can inspire them and help them to move along. So like you say, they are still connected, and they're preparing for their next birth and their next adventure. And Leonard always said, how excited he was when he came back into the physical world. So he's after a little break, he probably will be very excited to prepare the next birth. And so, but we can also contribute by talking honestly, and we've been doing that, you know, about people when they go to the spirit world, because it is helping them. So we don't only need to talk good stories, but we can tell the truth and say, okay, this is who you were in this life. These were some of your limitations, and we love you. We are grateful for your presence and everything that you contributed. And so, and in that way, Leonard was, everybody who met him, he knows he had his stories and his things, but the gratitude. And that also, especially what we did after his passing, all the prayers and all the good thoughts, and everybody sharing how much we appreciate what he gave to us, that helps the soul to ascend to the pure spirit. And so I think in that sense, you know, keeping Leonard with us is very powerful also for him, because he can also give us through messages that we can receive through our intuition.
Yeah, can I speak here? I just want to say I'm experiencing profound synchronicity with almost everything that's being said. I mean, it's almost overwhelming. And one of the things was that this morning when I arose, and I told you that I had this pain where I could barely move, but I decided, I wonder if there's really anything to connecting with the ancestors. Now, I've heard a lot about it over the past, and you know, intellectual is one thing, and I've contacted them, but this morning I started going through everyone that had ever died that I could think of, and I started sending them light. And so when you started talking about ancestors, it's like, oh my gosh, that is, you know, that's just amazing that you're doing that. But just the you know, I really picked up on the prosperity and the money stuff with Leonard as well, and that's profound. But just everywhere that it's been turning, I'm just saying, I'm almost breathless with the things that are being said, because they're so synchronous, that everyone is saying. It's not just you, it's everyone. So anyway, I'm amazed. I kind of cleared my schedule because of this back pain, because I thought I'm not going to be able to do as much because I can't move. And then it got healed, so here I am with time.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Anne. That's beautiful.
So I want to, and I'm hoping that you will all stay around, and John too, because I have more that I'd like to bring you in on later. But since you mentioned about the physical and using the physical and connecting to the ancestors, this is the perfect time for me to share something I wanted to. This is a very personal thing, but I think it's really important. I went to, I helped organize for a medium whose name is Hoyt Robinette, and I knew nothing about him, but I had heard he produced apports, which is spiritual material things that are out of nothing. And to make a long story short, I was resistant to actually going. I didn't think it had anything to do with me, but I did go. And they said I walked into the room and he was blindfolded and holding all these pieces of paper, and you could really feel the spiritual energy in the room. The presence was so palpable. And I went to the back and I put my name, and they wanted a question and someone you wanted to communicate with. So I thought, oh, all right, my grandparents. And I asked a few questions because, you know, I don't always follow directions exactly. And so he did all the billets and said, is that it? And they said, no, there's one more, and carried down my billet because I had arrived late. And what had happened at the start of this is they took an empty basket and took index cards unlined and put them in the basket with pencils and crayons and pastels and oil pastels and all this, and then just set it on a bench right next to my friend Alan Steinfeld. Many of you might know him. He's a very well-known spiritual community in New York City. And so after he read he blindfolded, took my billet and said, the love, the love. And he answered my questions, and it was my grandparents, right, Jack and Anna. So after this amazing reading, which really felt like my grandfather, and they opened this basket and started handing out these cards. These blank cards were no longer blank. And so when I got mine, I was totally dumbfounded, because it was a color drawing of my grandfather, a photo that I had never seen before of him, the glasses and everything, but his ears, it's my grandfather just kind of looking down at me. It was so extraordinary. You can't see the pink, and then around this was much more green. It's getting faded, the colors of the heart chakra. And on the back are the signatures or the names of different guides that I have. And at the training center the month before and over a period of time, I kept feeling all this Mormon energy around me. And there was a Mormon family that were there. And then here I have Joseph Smith. Now, Hoyt Robinette has nothing to do with Leonard or the training center or any of that, but there is Joseph Smith and among other names on my card. But I brought this to a family party and I showed it to people, without giving them the story. And they said, "Oh, where'd you get that? That's Papa," everybody recognized him immediately. And this was produced out of this. There is not a picture of my grandfather like this that anyone has. He died before the internet, so there's just no way this could have happened.
That's a beautiful piece. And I like this story that you're sharing, because you shared it with me before, and you mentioned you were actually sitting, I think, backstage or off to the side with the basket the whole time. It was right there next to you. So
I was. And then I moved to the back, but Alan Steinfeld and Paula Gloria were close friends of mine, were sitting right there. So they were there the whole time. They were there when it was all being put together. And if you saw and met Hoyt Robinette, if you Google him, you're going to see a lot of people discrediting him and saying all sorts of stuff about him. But this is just such a simple, pure man. This is no way he's out there faking this. But he definitely has an extraordinary. So when it all ended, because I was involved in getting the space, acquiring the space for them, helping them acquire the space, a friend of mine, Frank, and I were sitting there at the end, and Hoyt was having something to eat. And, he was, eating, and he looked at me and he goes, "I'm going to see you again," which he actually did. I did reorganize. But Frank had asked him, "How did you get this gift?" And he said, every day he meditated for 20 minutes, knowing with absolute certainty that he would receive this gift. And he did this every day for over 7 years. And he said, when he cleared all the obstacles in his mind, in his own mental, emotional body to having this happen, that's when it happened. And it's been happening ever since. And it started just with the signatures appearing on the back of the cards. And then he put in more colors and more, he was guided to, and then came the pictures, the drawings, the artwork.
Fantastic. So in 2 weeks, we will dive deeper on Leonard's birthday, actually into the topic also on physical immortality, because we want to explore special people also who have special gifts and who have a vision of themselves which is higher than the average day-to-day vision that most people have about themselves. So we are exploring some details about powers, abilities, inspiration that we have. And Sarah,
and you'll talk about Annalise Guerin then, or will
I can
or
do that
today?
if you want me. I can share a little bit, because
Heike, I want to check in first with, I see that Danielle Kit is here now, and I know you're on a time schedule also. You have little ones there. um, and your microphone's muted, so if you could unmute yourself.
Okay. Hey, where'd you go? Hi.
Hi,
Yes,
welcome.
they went for a walk, actually. Lily was going a little stir crazy. She might be taking an early.
Okay. So you have a little bit of time before you want to do your part then when they come back, or you were gonna, or is this a good time now while you're childless?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how, I'm sorry we're coming in late, so I'm not sure how you're organizing everything and what you, what you would like to see or hear.
Yeah, I mean,
well, Peace gave a little introduction that you were going to talk to us about, I think, witches,
midwives, and
sure.
Midwifery, and how that got labeled as witchcraft, and I mean anything that you wanted to speak to that.
Sure.
Or I know you had a book to read, a little story to read, but I think it's a children's story. And
it is, yeah.
I don't have Adamar here right now. He's with his dad, and I don't know where they are actually. They may have gone for a walk also.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe we can do the children's story towards the end and then have Grandpa Glenn Smiley with his story. And
oh, that's a great idea. Yeah. Daniel, we're just kind of going with the flow. We have a few things scheduled for people to come in, but we're following the flow also. So whatever feels right for you.
Okay. So did everybody introduce themselves? Should I introduce myself?
Yeah, give us a little introduction, maybe how you know Leonard, how you came into this community.
Sure.
Yeah,
and kind of go from there. Yeah, we'll see how much time I have. They're they're going for a walk. They were a little rowdy, so when they come back in, it might be like, okay, and that's what I have.
Great, that's all right.
Lily was going a little nuts. I told her she had to put clothes on if she wanted to come say hi.
Okay.
Yeah, well, okay, so I'm Danielle Kidd. That's who I am. I am a massage therapist for a long time. I trained as a midwife, although I haven't practiced either of those for a couple of years since my kids were born. And the way I came into the breathwork community actually, well, it's kind of a long story. So let me kind of distill it down. Well, so ultimately, I experienced kind of a healing crisis that it's kind of a long story, so I don't need to go into the whole thing, but that ultimately brought me to Aaron Overstreet. And so he and I started doing trades, breath work for massage therapy. Aaron is how I came into the fold. So, I started going to the Sierraville trainings. I was actually trying to think the other day which trainings I made it to and which ones. I know there were a couple of years, I think, when I was in my apprenticeship that I didn't make it to. And through that met Sarah, who is, one of my most dear friends. And and I'm a witch. so I have, I guess on that spiritual side of things, Sarah and I have had a lot of really beautiful, amazing trades, breathwork and bodywork trades that I love that you have called me your witch doctor, because that's what I am. So yeah.
Yes.
So that's who I am. I'm not sure where to go, or if we want to, if there's there was kind of a conversation thread, so I can we can jump in, or we can start.
Well, if I didn't know if you wanted to speak to anything about the history of midwifery, or kind of I'm not sure if you had anything in mind. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if there was anything you wanted to share about Halloween, or go
sure.
for it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I kind of had kids in mind, I guess, when I was thinking about it, but I can share it with you.
Yeah.
Too. Kids
Lots of us are parents here, so it's helpful.
Yeah. Well, so I'm really excited actually to be doing this, because so Halloween is also Samhain. You know, again, I don't know what all everybody's talked about, so you can
Just
stop
briefly,
me.
so you can go in.
Okay. Yeah, so Halloween is also Samhain. It's also, as I've heard you, various people, it's the you know, All Saints Day. It's the Day of the Dead. It's and it's the time when the veils are the thinnest, is my understanding of between our world and the spirit world. So that's why it's really easy to talk to your loved ones, to talk to your ancestors, to, you know, honor them, to communicate, to leave offerings. And also it's the time when the veils are the thinnest. So, you know, in places where there are older spirits that maybe you don't have a connection to and might seem a little scary because you don't know who they are or what they want, you know, that's where, you know, sort of bonfires came from, and carving pumpkins, because that was a way to kind of scare away the ghosts that might be coming to visit, you know, as the pumpkins, and dressing up in costumes to kind of trick the ghosts who might be coming to harass you, kind of things. And I actually was just looking up and I thought it was really fun. So trick-or-treating started, let's see, what did I read yesterday that I thought was really fascinating? So there was a period in kind of medieval times, I believe, when like poorer families would dress up and go ask for would go to the houses of richer families, and they would be given like little gifts of food or money or things like that. And that sort of evolved into kids or families dressing up and going and kind of performing. So that was where it wasn't really supposed to be trick or treat. It was kind of trick for treats, and that, you know, a family or the kids would go and maybe sing a song or recite a poem or, you know, do some kind of fun trick. And then they're, you know, for their neighbors, it was kind of, it reminded me actually of like caroling, you know, for Christmas, where you would go and, you know, you would sing Christmas songs, and then you would get, you know, you would all share, you know, your coffee, your meals or your drinks together and whatnot. So Halloween was kind of the same thing, where you would get to go and do something fun for your neighbor, and then you would get to share bread together, which I thought was really fun. So yeah, I guess I didn't really look into, you know, the connection with midwifery and witchcraft, other than, you know, there was a time when, I mean, the church just wanted to control everything, is really what it came down to. So they wanted to control um, the knowledge and the wisdom and the connection to spirit. And so anybody that threatened that because they got it from themselves or from their own ancestors or from their own inner knowing, or because they were female and powerful or landowners or rich, you know, they were labeled as witches. So there were a lot of midwives burned for a long time as witches. I don't know I don't know where to go with that, other than that happened. So
I think
yeah.
that kind of speaks to also some of the ancestral healing that or
Yes.
cultural or just the collective healing, you know, that's really unaddressed, I think, in our modern society. It's kind of coming more to the forefront, but I think there's a lot of love and energy to send to those ancestors that were persecuted and killed.
Yeah, for sure. I was part of a class, actually, like a psychic healing class for a period, and the instructor of that class talked about that, you know, if you have a lot of, you know, if you're in a group like this group of spiritual people and you feel a lot of anxiety or fears coming up, for many people it goes back to that time when we were persecuted for you know, in really harsh ways, you know, in really harsh ways, that, yeah, this gets carried forward. And so sometimes when you get into a group of powerful healers or powerful shaman or powerful energy workers, you know, people who are kind of following their own path with a capital P, yeah, it can bring up a lot of anxiety. And interestingly, I mean, I guess just to do a little processing, since it sounds like that's happening too, I realized, and I had not thought about it for a long time, you know, when my kids were born, I kind of stepped away from everything because I had babies. And you have to take your healer hat off for a while when you have babies, and that's fine. But also just to acknowledge, you know, there's a lot of anxiety for me around midwifery. And I was kind of reminded of that, of like, oh yeah, right. Because I was burned for probably a lot of times for being a healer, you know, but you know, maybe specifically for being a midwife. So yes, there is definitely healing to be done around that for many people, but also so exciting to see so many communities. We just last night connected with, there's a huge magical community here in Syracuse that I did not know about, and, you know, have connected with, and I'm just like, oh, like I was so excited, so excited. So it's neat to sign in and do this here.
Are you in
Fantastic.
Syracuse, New York? Syracuse, New York?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Marie Summerwood
I
was
am.
from there.
Yep.
Do you know of Marie Summerwood? She crossed over, but no, she used to do a lot of women's chants. Marie Summerwood.
Nice.
Did we lose? Is Danielle's? Yeah, yeah.
I am still here. It
So,
kind of garbled for just a minute.
Hi, Joanne. I love your outfit.
Hello, Arthur. How you doing?
Good morning. You have an early time.
Yeah.
That's great, Joanne. I love it.
Fabulous.
You have a crow or a raven on your shoulder. That's fabulous. Between the worlds, between the worlds. Here we are.
Well, Danielle, thank you. Was there anything else you wanted to say about any of that before we move on to, and we'll try to come back if we can get our children here. We'll try to have the story time. That'd be super fun.
Sure.
I like children's stories also, so it's fun for the adults. But I want to pause a minute here. We have a question from Keith Anderson in the chat room. So does anyone happen to remember if there are any particular practices Leonard liked to do to honor or celebrate during All Hallows Eve that we could highlight and discuss? Does anyone know?
I don't recall any.
I don't know if I spent a Halloween with Leonard before specifically. I may have, or he may have been traveling. So
I probably would have spent Halloween's been in Virginia around that time with him before his birthday. And I don't remember him doing anything specific for Halloween.
He talked about the trick or treat, but I also don't remember anything. But he.
It's a good question, though.
No.
I know at one training, it wasn't on Halloween, but at one training, when all of the popcorn was gone out of a bowl, he put the bowl on top of his head. And so I think he is down with the frolics of dressing up.
Yes. He liked his popcorn. I used to make it for him with powdered kelp. He liked powdered kelp on it and a little olive oil.
He was definitely, you know, the silly side of Leonard was always fun, and it would come out so spontaneously, you know, which was and unexpectedly. I spent time with him maybe, but it, you know, at a Halloween, but it would have been way back, you know, 30 years ago. That's why I was trying to see if anybody else, you know, in California in Chico, but if we did, I'm sure it was, you know, he might have talked about it briefly, and then we would have just breathed or chanted, you know, and probably just dedicated the chant to, you know, our ancestors.
Yeah, thank you. That's a wonderful thing to do also. Yeah, John, go ahead.
One point is since I associate Leonard with Babaji and Shiva so strongly, Shiva has a group of ghouls in a horde of the most hideous creatures, and they're called ganas. It's like skeletons, zombies, vampires, and they're all Shiva's devotees. Wow. Ganesh or Ganapati, the son of Shiva or the son of Parvati, more rightfully so, is like the lead of the army of the Ganas of this group. So if you ever see pictures in Indian mythology of this group, it'll look like a group of people out trick-or-treating. It looks almost exactly the same. And I've always made the connection with Shiva and these monsters and these ghouls, that Shiva's love, God's love, is unconditional, even for the monsters, the hideous, and the feared. So that's one way that I like to celebrate today, is knowing how to love even what's most feared.
That's beautiful.
Yes, it's part of the creation evolution process.
Thank you.
Do you mind if I follow up on that?
Sure.
There's in the animal medicine, the deer is associated actually with that exactly. Of I don't know if you're familiar with the animal medicine cards, but it talks about how the deer's like going up the mountain and there's a monster that comes in front of it, and the deer just loves the monster, and the monster like tries everything to scare the deer, and the deer is just everything love. So it just loves the monster, and eventually the monster stops being scary, and it just gets to be loved. Yeah, so that's really fun. That reminds me of that. And I always actually, I have a number of friends in my life that I think of as my dear friends, that it's always kind of like, you're my dear friends, like DEAR, but you're also my dear friends, my DER friends.
Sweet.
Well, there's an aspect of Halloween as a cross-quarter day. So I'd like to talk about the seasonal calendar, at least for the Northern Hemisphere, which is what I'm familiar with. But you have the solstices, the equinoxes, and then the cross-quarter days, which are traditions from one quarter, transitional periods from one quarter to the next. And so these earth-based traditions used a calendar that was actually based on the positions of the planets, the rotation of the earth. And we're talking right now earth, sun, moon, not so much out into the zodiac. And they had a very practical person. So these whole practices, not only were they demonized, the indigenous or earth-based practices, but the calendar has been, kind of turned a little off kilter as a way of, creating different holidays to kind of hide and disappear the old holidays. But the solstices and the equinoxes pertain to earth. It's not a religion, it's a calendar. And so to just look at Halloween, it's the final harvest. So that's a symbolic meaning, but it's also the time to get the crops in before the frost. Right. And to have these markings, these quarters and cross quarters marked, is a way to know when to plant, when to harvest, all of this. They were survival. It's how to survive on planet Earth once you move into that, season with the seasons and the changing of the seasons. So you get your final harvest in, and then you are preparing, you probably fermentation and dehydration and root cellars, whatever you're doing to prepare to preserve this food for the quiet season, the winter season. And so when you get all that done, boo, you have your big celebration, the holiday, Christmas, all these big, and the sun will come back again. We will survive, and calling the sun, yes, we're waiting for you to return. We look forward. And in the meantime, we're going to eat cake, and sugar and candy or whatever they add. And the excess, whatever was extra, we could celebrate with the extra because we've taken care of the coming cold days. And then, so after you clean up from the festivities, and in the Italian tradition, Befana comes in, who was the crone, the elder woman with her broom, and she became the crone witch. But what she was doing was, giving the last little treats to the children and sweeping up after all the holidays, because now it's time to mend the fishing nets and prepare the season, get ready and dream for the spring, make your plans for the coming spring and be prepared for that next cross-quarter day or equinox, where we're going to, now it's time to put the seed in the earth. Now it's time to do all of these things. So the calendar, the solstices and the equinoxes and the cross-quarter days are a survival tool. And this leads me into a little bit, we don't have to go into it right now, but I wanted to talk a little bit about Boganathar. And in reading again this material on Boganathar, and I just took a little clip of it to share today, because we'll do more in the future from this material. It said that he regulated the calendars. That was one of the things he did, was regulate the calendars. We're talking about in China when he took over a mission. I'll go into this a little bit, but he regulated the calendars and set up the rituals, the celebrations, the holidays. So it's not just like, oh yeah, we want you to do these rituals, for what, because we want you to worship. It's not about that. It's about putting the humanity in sync with the cosmos.
Yeah,
and it's
that's
very
beautiful.
important. Yeah.
And
So
I would like to add, based on that calendar, that's another metaphor as well, or an analogy of the breath. We're on the expiration time now of the breath, or that's the fall, or the autumn is the exhale, the spring is the inhale, and the summer and the winter are the top and the bottom of those breaths. And the same way how we can tell what's going on with our life by studying the pattern of breath that we're having on our inhale or exhale, the holding or the resistance that may be there. We can also, it correlates to these seasons as well, because as above, so below. So we've been given the key with rebirthing breath work for all of this, because the breath is the one thing that unites it all, that we all can unite in from it. Another thing, the Halloween is 40 days approximately from the equinox, from the autumn equinox. And on the other side of the calendar, we have 40 days from the vernal equinox is Beltane. So it's not just an arbitrary day just thrown over here. It's right on the other side of the calendar. You have the Beltane, 40 days there. So this is about halfway in between our exhalation right now for this season.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great. It's just amazing how it all comes together. I did put the link to this material, but I've read this material before, and I swear there are new things in there that I hadn't seen before. So I'm really looking forward to exploring it over time.
So I like to come to a couple of books, basically. And we called this talk or this meeting today, Raised from the Dead, because we want to also talk about alternatives what inspires us, and so first of all, did you want to introduce the book piece?
Well,
Sarah
Heike, I
is
think
in-
that
yeah.
I was going to bring this one in later. This is a book that Leonard just adored, and it has fantastic stories of miracles performed by saints throughout history that were well documented within the Catholic
We have
Church.
another about 40 minutes if we go with 2 hours.
Yes. Well, yeah, we set it up for 3 hours maximum, but you know, we can flow with that. If you, Heike, are you on a schedule where you need to leave sooner than?
No.
You're all right. Okay. So yeah, we could go in two directions. I was going to offer Heike, if you wanted to speak about the incorruptibles a bit. And I know Peace, you mentioned Boganathar. We can circle around back to that. Shall we go with the incorruptibles next? And you want to tell us what that's all about? Because Leonard was really fond of them.
Yeah, Leonard loved this book, and he used to read it in the bathroom, so in the bathtub. So that my book looks a bit strange because he always looked at it when he was here. And he sent me, actually, together with Alfredo Galbusera and a couple of other friends, on a trip to Italy to find out about those incorruptibles that are described in both of these books, and to actually look at their practices that they were doing. So the incorruptibles, for anybody who doesn't know it, they are actually Catholics, usually Catholic saints, but there is other people who've mastered that because it's coming also in different traditions. People that kept their body intact even after physical death. That means the people left the physical body behind, but they do have, after hundreds of years, some of them being in clay, which usually deteriorates the body,